Good evening, trail community. Today we're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we're talking to Lori Keys, who is the executive director of the Fort Wayne Trails Incorporated. Hi, Lori. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm wonderful. My first question is just what is Fort Wayne Trails?
Well, Fort Wayne Trails is a non-for-profit private 501c3 organization, and we were actually just formed in 2011 from a merger of 3 previous grassroots non-for-profits. The trails in Fort Wayne originally were amongst some of the first trails in the state when the original few miles of the River Greenway was built in the center of Fort Wayne. It was in the late 1970s. And it was due to a group of volunteers who saw the importance of preserving the green space, providing free recreation, and the importance of our riverfront as well. So they got together, and back then they were able to get a bulldozer and point and show, where they wanted to build the trail, where they wanted to pave it. We wish we could kind of still do that today, but that was how the original River Greenway was built, entirely volunteer-driven. And a grassroots group formed that became the Greenway Consortium, a non-for-profit group that was focused on central Fort Wayne and on expanding the River Greenway, at first connecting the parks, but then as things developed, providing active transportation to many destinations throughout central Fort Wayne. And in about 2001, so many years later, in 2001, there was kind of a resurgence of the trails, and between the 70s and 2000, the city had kind of turned its back on the trails and the rivers, and they were in disrepair. They weren't the most popular destinations, but people were seeing trail systems in other cities like Indianapolis coming along, in Michigan and Ohio. So people started saying, hey, we should have some more trails here in Fort Wayne, not just along the River Greenway. So it wasn't very easy to get to if you didn't live real close by. So there was a group that formed in 2001 called Aboit New Trails, and they formed in the southwest area of the community. And there were a couple things that happened back then. Again, we're a very volunteer-driven community here, and people had gotten together to build the very first park out in the southwest area. There were about 33,000 residents there at the time, and they didn't have any parks. So one volunteer coordinated this big project. They got the tools donated, built this whole park, celebrated at the end and said, this is so great, we have this park, but wait a minute, we still have to drive to use it. We still have to drive our children 1 mile, 2 miles to use this park. So that's not a real service to us. Someone ought to build a trail. And then in the fall of 2001, it was actually September 18th, of 2001, a local cyclist was killed while riding his bike on a county road. He was cooling down he and the group were very experienced cyclists, and it was a very tragic accident for this community. And his name was Ronald Repka, and he left behind a widow, Sharon Repka, and 2 young boys at the time. And it was Sharon's friends who really rallied around her and decided that the time to start building these trails was now, that they couldn't allow for the safety of their families to be endangered any further. And within a few months of that accident, Sharon started a foundation that still exists today called the Ronald Repka Foundation, and they provided some of the first donations to Aboit New Trails when it was getting up and running. So by 2003, they had formed their board, and at that time there was one stretch of sidewalk in that part of the community along an arterial road. And today there are actually almost 20 miles of trails out in the Aboit area, and it's entirely due to the energy and passion of the volunteers who got behind that project. The third grassroots group that helped to form Fort Wayne Trails was called Northwest Allen Trails, and they saw similar voids in the northwest part of Allen County. They had the isolated subdivisions up there as well, but they also had some really neat potentials for some rail corridors that could become trails in that area. So again, a group of volunteers led the way on that, and today they have finished the first mile of the Puffer Belly Trail up in the northwest part of the community. And that area ties to a YMCA, and it's one of the most popular segments of our trail system. In 2011, when we connected 50 miles of trails and actually served the community on more of a regional level, the three groups realized it was time to combine. So now the community has only one name to remember of Fort Wayne Trails, non-for-profit.
So I know that you've been an advocate for several years. Has your role changed because of the growing popularity of the trail systems?
It has. It has changed. My role has changed quite a bit from when I first came here. I came here in 2006 from Indianapolis to take on the role as the first employee of any of those non-for-profit groups, and I served as the director of Aboitnu Trails from 2006 until the beginning of 2011 when Fort Wayne Trails was formed. Coming from Indianapolis, where we already had a pretty robust trail system, I thought that the volunteers out in Aboit were kind of crazy because they said to me, we built this park, and just like we built the park, we're going to build a whole trail system ourselves, volunteers. I thought, wow, here I had worked with governments and everything that's involved in
City
that.
and state and everybody in Indianapolis.
But these volunteers were bound and determined to make this happen, and they did. They did it. They really showed me what's possible when a group of people who are passionate, who are organized and driven, just what they can accomplish. So as Fort Wayne Trails, we're trying to carry on that same fire and expand the trail system to all of the underserved areas of our community that we still have. Back in 2006, since we didn't have a very robust trail system, when we were going out trying to raise support and donations, we were showing them pictures. We were showing them drawings. We were saying, imagine what our community could look like. And we were trying to get people to grasp this vision that we could only just describe to them. And I remember one of my first strategic planning meetings with my board of volunteers, one of my board members said, one of the biggest things we have to do is we have to get the cows out there. And he was using that analogy to we have to get trails on the ground so people can use them and experience them, and then they'll know, what they've been missing. So we did exactly that. We got the first projects built, and now we got these 50 miles connected. And now that people can use the trails and they're seeing the health benefits, they're getting out in nature, kids are walking and biking to school, more people are biking to work. We're just seeing all of these snowball effects. Now my job has turned from showing people pictures of what it could look like to people in different parts of the community saying, why aren't we on the trail system? And why doesn't this go out to our part of the community? So that's shifted our focus, especially since our predecessor organizations were in specific geographic areas, and now we're county-wide. We've had to go back to the drawing board a little bit to look at what's the best way to serve the entire community here with safe and convenient bike and pedestrian infrastructure.
So I mentioned the role of an advocate, but what is an advocate?
An advocate does several things. An advocate, first of all, gives the community a voice. And at Fort Wayne Trails, we're really proud to give a unified voice to the community because we serve every area of the county. And I don't know if people always realize how much power a citizen has with their elected officials, their city council, with getting together and being able to make changes happen for the good of the community. And we're kind of an avenue that collects these voices, that helps connect people and government, helps connect people with their electeds, and we help to keep biking and walking and the importance of safety and a human scale on the top of an agenda for our community. Here we have city government and county government, so we work very closely with both, as well as the state of Indiana. We rely on literally hundreds of volunteers to help represent our mission and help advocate throughout the community to make sure that that we're always keeping people in mind with transportation projects, so that we're not just building for cars, but we're building for people.
So I understand that one of the projects that you worked on was Oprah's Big Give. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us something about?
We were working with an advertising firm and with our local media to develop a campaign that we're going to call the network, the Fort Wayne Trails. And we were about to kick off some fundraising because we realized we had just a few really significant gaps left to fill in before we could connect at least a fundamental system. Right around then, the Oprah's Big Give program was going on, and Oprah's people decided that they were going to present a challenge to all the ABC affiliates across the country. So the stations were eligible to apply for funds, and their task was to choose a local charity, and they were going to get $10,000 of seed money with the challenge to grow that money as big as possible, and they had to hold some type of event. So our ABC affiliate looked across the community, and they thought, you know, this Trails project has some potential. We think it could have some real impact. This woman said, we have this opportunity to apply for some seed money through Oprah. Are you interested? Money, Oprah. Sure, yes, absolutely. And she said, well, the application is due tomorrow, and you would have to hold an event, you know, at the end of the campaign. So we got the application in the next day, and we were awarded this opportunity to grow $10,000 as big as possible. And as we had more and more media attention, our Indiana's News Center donated all the advertising time for this, so people started to hear about it. People started to call and say, could I donate land? Of course. You know? So we got some commitments that way, or some in-kind commitments. And at the end of the day, 7 weeks later, we held events in all parts of the community, in the Southwest, Northwest, the East. And then we all converged upon downtown, and we had a giant celebration. We had about 3,000 people celebrate throughout that entire day. And Tony Dungy and some of the Colts players came up. And at the end of the day, Fort Wayne actually won the whole Oprah's Big Give Challenge out of all 90 of these communities that participated. So we raised, including the mayor's match money, there was about $1 million raised in cash and in-kind contributions and land commitments. And because of that challenge, it was really, most importantly, it was the first time that the city, just community-wide, heard about the trail system as a unified thing, and really started to get behind it. Momentum really grew from there. And we were able to build some really key connectors with that funding, like the towpath trail that went from downtown Fort Wayne out to the southwest part of our community and connected thousands and thousands of people together. It really helped us provide a regional linkage there.
So what are some of your current projects that you're working on?
We're getting ready to launch a campaign on May 1st, and we are calling it the Countdown to Connectivity. And what we've realized is that kind of the next layer of our trail system, the goal is to connect to the underserved areas that are still isolated, that can't access the trails, and to fill in some really critical gaps in the system. So when we look at our trail network, in every quadrant, there's a really key gap that we can fill. And because of the grassroots momentum, we've realized that we have $5 million in government and existing funds that we could have access to if we match it with $1 million of new private funds. So there aren't many fundraising campaigns where you get a 5-to-1 return on the dollar.
In millions.
Right, exactly. So our board is really excited about the strength of this message that every dollar given becomes $6 for the trails. And we can build with that just over 6.5 new miles of trails that include some really challenging sections and some really signature projects like connecting our downtown up with our zoo, which is nationally recognized, and up to Glenbrook Square Mall, which is a very, very highly dense commercial and retail area through there. Increasing connectivity to some of our university campuses like IPFW, furthering projects on the southeast side, which really are in need of more bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. And we have till the end of 2013 to raise this $1 million. And as each project will be built in phases. So we can then build those 6.5 miles and increase connectivity to thousands of residents and serve a lot more visitors in every segment of the community.
How do you visualize the horizon from Lori Keys in Fort Wayne?
I think Fort Wayne, I'm excited to be here right now because Fort Wayne has so much potential to be a truly livable city. One thing I love about Fort Wayne is it's not too late yet. It's not so built up that we can't fix some of the mistakes of the past and do some really cool projects moving forward to improve livability, to make this a more thriving, improve mixed-use development and things like that. So I see the Fort Wayne Trails being a big part of putting Fort Wayne on the map, literally and figuratively, as a livable city, a desirable place to live, a place where people can afford to live but also enjoy a really high quality of life, quality of opportunity here. We have so many beautiful parks that we're tying together. We have a lot of exciting projects. So I see the trails as sort of a glue that can tie all of this together. And we also have a really willing populace here that's led the way and kept the fire going in these projects. So I really see Fort Wayne becoming known as a very cool and hopping Midwestern little city.